So this is what we're going to do. We fell in love with, this is from a company that we normally get our get a lot of vases from, and they had these fun topiary forms. And so we were thinking, well, what can we do with this? It would be kind of fun and quirky, and just it was a really different project. So we're going to be using a combination of dried materials, but we also have some succulents that we're going to make almost like little mini kokedama with, like little moss wrapped plant
Yep.
things that we're going to fix with. So that's really fun. See, there's a component of it that's living, and then a component of it that's dried. And if you wanted to, if you could always keep it out, but if you stow away things from one, spooky season to the next, if your succulents were doing really well, we're going to affix them in such a way that it'll be really easy for you to take them off if you wanted to give them a different home, and then everything else would store nicely for the next holiday season. So let's unpack everything. So you're not really going to need a water source with this. I do have my mist bottle with me, just because I sometimes find that it can be nice just to give the succulents a little bit of a mist before we're putting them on, but they're not going to be soppy wet. And you can also mist afterwards. The only other thing that's not in your kit that might be nice for you to grab if you are not too far from the kitchen is if you have some ground cinnamon. I know that sounds totally contrary to making a bouquet or a design, but we're going to do something with this with the succulents if you have it. If you don't, it's no big deal, but it's a little kind of pseudo plant wives tale that I had heard about, but it actually works really, really well.
Well, give me 1 second. I'll go grab it. I'll be right back.
That's great. So I'm going to start getting stuff out of my bag so that I can walk us through it. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
That'll be perfect. And again, it's just to give it just a tiny little bit of moisture, and it's not the end of the world if you don't have it.
Well, I was going to ask if we needed to keep misting the succulents to keep them alive, or how they would thrive. So
right. Well, and just a little bit of water, and you can't even do if you don't keep a mist bottle, around. I am not the best plant parent. So I have trained myself now, like behind my kitchen counter, I have a mist bottle and a pitcher that I keep there all the time so that I will remember to water my plants, because very often it is a spooky plant graveyard at my house, and I should not admit that as a flower tub owner. But if you don't have a mist bottle, you can always just sort of like wet down a paper towel, and the way we're going to do it, like just sort of come up on them and, give them like just a little. Succulents don't need to be saturated,
right?
So just giving them like a little, almost like a wet towel or something, like coming out of the sauna or what have you. So let me walk you through our components, and then there are a few different ways we could build this out. But what we have found now, after doing a couple of trial and errors with this, we're going to do some of the little decorative work on it first.
Okay.
With doing our little corseting with the shoelaces, and then we'll assemble some of our other pieces, and then take some time for you to do your placement. And this is a guide, like the fun sample that Darcy made. This is a guide for us. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. We've got fun components, so if you want to do a little bit more up at the top of the boot, or you want to run something down one side and then down the other, hers is a little bit more concentrated on the top, and then kind of down one shaft, one side of the boot, one shaft of the boot. So we've got this fun topiary form, this groovy little saucy boot. And this came from our friends at Jamali Gardens in New York. They have just the grooviest things. They just come up with like these interesting containers, and we're always like, wow, look at that one. And I like that this is not super heavy too. It's not a super heavy piece. So in your live materials, everything has been live at one point or the other, but some things are dried. You've got a little assortment of some succulent pieces.
Yeah.
And one thing that's nice about this project is the succulents don't have to be big. And, invariably you're in, say you run in like Home Depot or Lowe's, or sometimes even, like a grocery store that has a garden center plant component to it. They're always succulents become such a thing now. You'll always find trays of like little small ones. And sometimes you'll even see sort of a scratch and dent center, you know, where maybe some are on their last leg. So what's nice about this is it uses them almost like little bits and pieces. So you don't have to have big, you know, perfect succulent specimens, which that's sometimes where succulents can be a little pricey. So, you know, if you were building this outside of having, like, you know, one of the kits that we've put together, you would have sort of a low threshold. You wouldn't have to go out and buy like super expensive, you know, 4 to 6 inch succulents that sometimes can, you know, are certainly worth it, but could easily be, you know, $20+ a piece at a garden center. So you're going to have some different little variations of succulents there, and we're going to we sent this little box along one to transport in, but then we're going to shake the dirt off most of these so we get them down to their root. So that'll give you a place to keep all of that corralled. And then in your moss mix, you've got both Spanish moss that we're going to use. You can use either with the cocodama that we're going to make, or you can use it as a decorative treatment and material on your boot. And we also have this really beautiful sheet moss or sphagnum moss, or as the folks that we get it from the mountain call it, log moss. So this is actually from the North Carolina mountains, and you can see how dense it is, how spongy. Yeah. So this was harvested maybe about 2 weeks ago, and we get it. We actually drive up there to get it now. It comes, we get it right outside of Spruce Pine in Burnsville, in that area, from a family that they started as kids. The folks who own it, they would harvest this, and now it's their business to have other people. Some of their families still harvest, but they'll have other people who will bring them huge bags of like galax leaves and different mountain foliages and this moss. So, and they harvest it just about year round, but there are a few dormant periods where they have to let it, you know, like sort of reinvigorate and regrowth. But right now is one of its really beautiful periods where there's still a lot of green, but you also start to see some of this brown with it. I'm just always amazed at how thick and absorbent it is. So this is really great for the purpose that we're going to do, but it's also really nice in any cocodama that you would do, just to have that extra, you know, that sort of moisture lock that it provides. And then you've got a little bit of green binding wire, and we use this instead of the heavier metal wire because, one, it's a little bit more pliable and easy to work with, and it pretty much recedes by the time we put it up next to the boot and build out the cocodama. So then in your dried materials, you've got just a fun gathering here of a little bit of everything. So let me get some of this moss out of the way. My husband was just not bemoaning, but let's just say suggesting. So our daughter just went off to college, and we have a room in our basement that has been, because she paints and does other art things, and he's like, I thought you were going to put all of this down in the basement, but it's not on the kitchen counter when we do it. But so maybe the next time I see you in class, we'll have that going. But the dry materials that we have tonight are a little bit of a collection of some things from a couple of local farms that they grow not to provide people with fresh flowers, but they grow things for seed programs and or for dried flower projects. And then we've got a couple of other farms that had tried their hand at it this year. So it's fun to see things that a few months ago or even a few weeks ago would have been coming to us fresh in water that have over time been dried. And sometimes, you know, that can take a few months. But you've got in here a couple of different kind of fun, whimsical, like lots of movement. So this is a little bunny tail, and it, you know, it's going to be one of our accessory items for this. And it's nice because this is its natural state. Sometimes you'll see this and it's a little brighter white, which means that it's been bleached, or you might see it even dyed in a lot of fun different colors. But this is pretty true to how it would naturally dry. It gives that little bit of sort of golden patina to it. And then this is just, I think most people call this like angel feather. You'll see it's just so light and whimsical. I'm sure it's got some really long, fancy botanical name, but that always escapes me. We have different vendors who call it different things, but I love just how light and airy it is. Darcy used some pampas grass in her sample, but we had gotten this back in, so we thought it would be fun to send this. But pampas grass would certainly work. In your dried materials, this probably looks pretty familiar because you'll see this is yarrow, and you'll see this in a lot of fresh designs this time of year, but we love it because even when we're using it in a fresh bouquet and it's going out, it's nice because it's going to keep that color. And the heads of it, you'll see, have all of these little laterals, so you can use it as a full clump, but you can also break it down and distribute the color a lot. Then let's see, and she's got these bundled together for me, so let me undo this. But we've really gotten, dried materials have become really, really popular over the past couple of years, and we're lucky in North Carolina that there are a lot of folks who, before the fresh flower market or fresh flower industry locally, has seen a resurgence, that we've had a lot of people who were growing either for seed or for dried projects in the craft industry. So we've got a pretty healthy community of people growing. So that's great. In your group, it may vary just a little bit in color and density, but we tried to make most of these pretty consistent. So these some people call these gumdrops. Their technical name is gumfrina, but they're just fun, and they really do look like a little gumdrop.
Yeah,
and
they do.
These are dried, but that's not very far from what they look like when they come in. The stem would be greener. You'll see the stem has, gotten a little more brittle now and sort of dehydrated, but the color is pretty true. It's always interesting to see what will change and then what will hold color. So you've got some fun little gumdrops to work with, and they're great for projects like this to fill in with little nooks and crannies of color. And then this is always something that people love in both fresh and in dried, but I'm always fascinated by what this looks like in a dried material. So this is celosia, and celosia comes in two distinct forms. Some people will call this the comb or coxcomb, or they'll call this brain celosia, because you'll see, if you look at it up close, it really does look almost like the little ridges and valleys of a brain. And then you'll also see it sometimes in plumed form, so it almost looks like a little flame. Same flower, different sort of, not even kissing cousins. I mean, sort of like, the redheaded stepchild, but you've got a couple of different colors here. Again, this is one of these flowers that is pretty true to the color that it is when it's fresh. This more peachy one has faded a bit, but what I always love is how velvety it becomes.
I know, I love this stuff.
Isn't it neat? And it certainly is, it has that same texture to it to a degree when it's fresh, but when it's dried, it's even more so. So that'll be fun for us to play with. And then you've probably got like a few little straw flower blooms. These lose quite a bit of volume, but they're still really fun and retain a good bit of color. And then they also have sort of this velvety center that's exposed as they dry. And you may have a few of this is a creamy white variety of them as well. And then one last little piece of celosia, and then a fun little element that I like. So this is Nigella pod, and Nigella is this lovely, just really wispy, ethereal flower that we'll get. And it doesn't have a tremendously long season, but we see it a little bit more now because it started to have bigger commercial cultivation. But it's one of those things where we'll order it. We have this in scabiosa. So scabiosa is this other almost like little, ethereal, light, delicate bloom that's beautiful. We use it a lot in wedding work and very dainty bouquets like we would Nigella. And then it totally takes on a different perspective when it goes to its seed pod. And there are people who will grow it solely for this purpose because people love to use the pods as much as they do the fresh flowers. And you'll see, there's a little bit of translucency to it, but then it retains a tiny bit of color. So these are fun for texture as well. So we've got, a range of colors, sort of, bordering a little bit on jewel tones, but with some creams and, sort of some patinaed, aged looking elements. So it gives it sort of a vintage feel, which I think plays nicely off the boot. And then in your bag, I'm sure you're wondering, like, what in the world are these things that she has in here? So I know you probably opened it up and like, why are there rocks? And I'll show you, because what we found when we were working with this was we didn't want to do something heavy. When we did one of our first samples, we lined the whole thing with moss. And so we had it where, it was like completely, lined with something to give it some weight and heft. And then we put some foam in it and we're using that as a material. And it ended up just feeling sort of heavy and clunky. But then we were kind of flummoxed because we're like, well, we need a way to weight it down.
Right.
And so we were looking all around the shop and we had just gotten in some river rock. And Darcy was like, let me just try something. So you can see it just barely. There's a little bit of river rock in the foot.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that's why that's there. And it's just in this sort of natural charcoal. If you don't want to see it, you can use some of your moss to camouflage it, but it was the perfect foil for it. It was just the exact amount of weight. So sometimes, necessity is the mother of invention, even
Exactly.
in our business. And you don't have to use that, but it is nice for it just to have that little bit of weight. We're not doing anything super heavy to it, but it does give it just a little bit more stability. So in your mix, you've also got like a fun little feather. Those just came in, so we don't have one of those for here because we just got them in today. And then you've got a little length of wire that you can use. Darcy made this fun kind of mossy cuff that she also included a little bit of her succulent pieces at the top, and use this to sort of bind through and give a little bit of sparkle. You can use it that way, or you can bind it through if you'd like. And then in your bag, we thought, well, it's a boot, but we've got to lace it up somehow. So in that, you have got this.
Oh, I was wondering about that. That's what that is.
So these are your shoelaces.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so this is what we're actually going to do first, because we found that it's just a little bit easier to do this. You may even want to like lay it down, or, depending on how you prop it. So I'll try to get you a better angle on it so you can see it. So if you'll see, what we've done is we made little hooks, little eye hooks out of that metal wire, and then laced it up. And again, it's always funny when you're sort of like, we're all in there brainstorming together, and Darcy was looking for materials, and I forget who found it for her, but somebody said, well, look at this. We had just gotten this little twine in, and it's actually for our wrapping station. And it was so fun with this. We're like, that's the ticket. That's exactly what we needed. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 10 little
Rings, those little
rings for that. So what we're going to start with is that. And all we've done is we, spooled them. So we took this, and Kyle was her prep assistant this afternoon. So he basically just took sort of a dowel and just did rings of it along, and then would go and clip them and make these like, perfect little circles. So when you're spacing these out, Darcy started kind of midpoint on the actual toe of the boot, and spacing them out. And you can be as precise, or if you want to do them a little zigzaggy coming up. And then you've got a nice length of ribbon, of twine to lace up and tie your sassy little bow at the top. So if you want to jump in, and let's start on that, then she did not cut this. She used it at the bottom and crisscrossed it up, and I think that works pretty nicely and pretty efficiently. So I've got 2, 4. I may even have more than 10 here, but she had done 10, so that'll be what I do. 4, 8, and then I've got 2 extra for good measure in case I decide that I want to add a little bit more. So what you'll do is kind of eyeball where you want to start, and you're just going to slightly open up that, and then just clamp it in. Okay. So just catch it, and we'll do this part. And then once we've done that, it'll be easy to get everything else rolling and in place. This is probably the more tedious part of this. So And do you have big plans for Halloween?
No, actually, we will be sitting here with the lights off.
Yeah, so our house has traditionally been the Halloween house in our neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
And don't know really sort of what prompted that other than Warren and Vivian in particular love Halloween. It's always been, really this shared love of the holiday and spooky movies and spooky decorations. So this is one of the first years since we've lived here. We've lived here. We actually built this house and moved in the year we opened the Florist because we weren't completely crazy. We had Vivian was barely a toddler and it's like, oh, we need another thing to do. And so over the years, as you'll see behind me with the torso that's here.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, we have collected all kinds of it. I've got Halloween bowls and we've got gourds and we've actually got an attic full of things. And last year, Vivian's senior year in high school. So we were not going to do anything because right around Halloween, she just had a ton of school activities. And she's like, but Dad, it's my last year at home. So we didn't go all out. I mean, because I'm talking about like, we have animatronic kind of things. And
oh, wow.
There's like skulls and bones and things that shake at the door and fog machines and tombstones for the yard. I mean, it's pretty, we don't have any big nylon blow up things, but we got lots of Halloween decorations. And so last year, I would say that they went maybe 65 to 70% all out, not quite all out. And so we've had several weekends where we've either been really busy with work or we've been down to see Vivian or she's been up to see us. And so the other day, our neighbor next door, their son he's not quite in school yet. So he's maybe 4 and a half. And last year was their first year living beside us. And he caught Warren like in the yard when he was getting ready to live with his mom. It's like, when is it going to be Halloween at your house? He was very disgruntled that we do not have up any decorations yet.
Oh, no.
So Warren and I are like, oh no, what do we do? Do we need to get some things up by the weekend or do we just go somewhere for dinner and pretend like we forgot? Because now, our kid is off in college. She's like, no, I'm not coming home for Halloween. It's a big deal to be, in college and do Halloween stuff here. So, yeah, so we're left with now it had been in the attic, but now everything is migrated down to the garage. So a garage full of things. So
that's funny.
Now, is your neighborhood a big neighborhood for trick-or-treating?
You wouldn't think it would be, but if you look around, you can see that there are some people who have decorated. So clearly they're game to entertain trick-or-treaters if there are any that come through. My sense is it's been relatively quiet. My parents have said the same thing about their neighborhood. So I don't really know how many kids do it anymore these days.
Right.
But, yeah.
Yeah. I think last year was pretty healthy for us. I think there were a lot of kids who were so stir crazy from not having been able to do it the year before, so we'll see this year. I mean, I guess, Vivian always contended when she was in school that if it falls on a school night, that the next day should be a holiday. And I kind of agree with that, but we'll see how that goes. So, I did 10 little rings.
I think I did too.
Yeah, and I've got them scattered about. So then what I'm going to do is, if you're ready for the next step, you're just going to lace from the bottom up. So you'll pull across. And you might, like after we do this, you might actually go back and, like I've got a couple of rings that could probably be a little tighter. And I was just doing it with my hands. I keep, let's see, where did they go? I do keep a pair of like little pliers, like needle nose pliers. I got these a few weekends ago in Hobby Lobby, and they've been great because they cut here. They have like a little cutter piece there. And then, they're like the traditional fine nose, needle nose pliers there. But I guess they call them like a 4-in-1 because the little tines of them or little, blades of them here are wide enough. This part is sharp, so you have to watch that. But these are wide enough, like say you were wanting to spool something on it, you can do that. So if you have something like this to tighten them up, you can do that, but I don't know that it's, it's not a requirement. So when you get ready to lace, you'll get the first part up and then my boot fell over. So yeah, there we go. So just get it even like that. And then I think I'll do it this way. It may lace up a little easier. So then you're just going to crisscross. So however you would lace your shoes, you're going to lace this, or lace your boots. This was tying shoes and lacing shoes was my Achilles heel when I was little. I struggled with that, and I'm not exactly sure why. It was something like, I think it took me forever to learn how to tie my shoes.
Well, my parents tell the story that once I learned how to tie mine, I went around tying all the shoes I could find in the house.
Oh, that's great. I love that. That is funny. Well, I mean, when you think about it, that and like riding a bike are such like, like it's such a passage to do those,
exactly. Yep.
So yeah, I felt bad because Vivian, of course, like, it's always interesting what a kid, either infers or inherits from a parent. And she too struggled with tying her shoes. I just like, it was just like the hardest thing for me to learn how to do. But, and now they're, all kinds of snazzy shoes you don't even have to tie. But did you ever have to do like one of those fun, like when we were, I can remember, I think I may even still have it upstairs in the scrapbook of things my mom say, like where you'd have the little paper cut out of a shoe and you'd use that to lace in school, learning how to lace,
I probably did. I just don't remember that part.
Yeah. So
this is so fun.
Yeah. I always love it. I mean, I really, really enjoy our fresh bouquet projects, but I think sometimes the ones that are like this, where it may be like dried materials, I enjoy a lot because, they're they last a long time, but then you don't necessarily have to worry so much about keeping, things out of water or keeping your materials a certain way.
So is this the type of thing, once you get done laced up, you might wrap it around like you would a boot if you were wearing ski boots or something?
You totally could do that. I think that's part of the fun of it is, kind of, like, especially if you've got some extra string, if you want to do like a little something extra to it. Like I think Darcy might have even gone, like kind of doubled back in one place. I've got one that is off. Let's see, so I've got here. There we go. That's where. And again, I'm struggling to tie my shoes. I don't know how that happened here. I think one got caught as I was doing it. So there we go. Yeah. Yeah. I think that would actually be a fun look. You could do, you could like loop it around because there's a generous amount of twine. So it could be kind of fun to do like a loop around with it a time or two and then tie it off. Yeah, it's just kind of like a ski boot or a.
Yeah, I like it. I just did it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Since we did these, I have had Nancy Sinatra on the brain with these boots are made for walking, and it's funny how like, a song like that will, come up in your head for whatever reason. And then you hear it everywhere else. It's like every time I turn on Instagram, or I've heard it a couple times on the radio, and I'm like, how is it that I keep hearing the song? So yeah, so now we've got like our fun little lace up. I love that. Great suggestion, because I had plenty of twine left over, and then it brings that materiality around. So cool. And then you've got that little bit of sparkle on it. So now, if you want to weight your boot down, it's a good time to do that so that, it gives you a little bit more stability with working with it. And if you want to use a little bit of your moss to camouflage that, the Spanish moss probably works the best. It doesn't have to be wet, but it's a little more pliable if it's wet. And so what you could do is you could just drop the rocks right down in, but if you want to camouflage a little bit, you could drop one in and then have some extra moss around. I think my hand is thin enough to go down in here. Might need a little dowel or something, but I was trying to see if I had a stick long enough. But the joy of working in a kitchen, could probably use a butter knife to coax it.
I have a confession to make. I had dropped the rocks in before you even said we were supposed to lace things up, so I was ahead of you.
Oh, that's perfect. That's great. Yeah, I kept going back and forth in my head about kind of like what the right time to do it would be. So, but we joked about how, like, you know, you could do all kinds of things with this. So like if you had some spooky, somewhere in this house, I know I've got like some witch's socks, you know, like you could even put like a witch's sock in it if you wanted to. But yeah, that gives it just a nice little extra bit of weight. And you really don't see them at all when
No, I love it. They
Yeah.
kind of blend right in. And when everything else is on top, you won't even notice them.
Yeah, and you know, and again, I mean, it's decorative river rock, so it's kind of nice. Like it just adds another little layer of texture to it. Okay, so here is how you're going to. So we're going to use the little glue dots to affix our dried materials, but let's make our little baby kokedama first, because then we'll have those to the side. And as we start going, if you decide you want to do some dried materials, then add a kokedama, you can do that. And you don't have to start and stop. Okay.
Sure.
So in doing these, you don't have to do this, but if you want to put a paper towel down, you can, just to catch a little bit of the dirt and stuff. But let's see, what have we got here? Darcy joked with me. She's like, I'm going to give you a surprise package. And I'm like, oh no, what does that mean? So I think she gave me like some little cactus bits, and then she gave me like a little succulent, you know, she's like, I want you to have some variety. So most of the time, so this is what's called a 4-inch grower pot. Okay.
Yeah.
But it can be a little tricky if you were to go and buy succulents. You might have what is considered a 2-inch succulent.
I was going to say that's what I have. That's what she's given me, the little 2-inch ones.
Yeah. And so, this is probably the most versatile size. This is what we keep the most in. Sometimes you'll see them in garden centers in trays, and they might be in little 2-inch pots, but sometimes you'll see them you may see like a 2-inch or like a little cluster of 2-inch ones in a 4-inch pot. That can be one of the most economical ways to buy them. And so we get them in assortment. Sometimes we'll get them in the grower pots. There may be several in there, or it might be a big, like 4, even 6-inch succulent. And because they don't take a lot of plant material, so you're not going to generally see it in a big pot. But then sometimes we'll get them in, you know, like almost like a egg carton type container. We actually have one vendor when we'll get this is the size we use the most, because these are ones that you can use like in corsages or boutonnieres or in bouquet work the most easily. And we've got a couple of vendors, when they ship them, they won't really have much dirt at all on them. It's almost like the orchid medium, you know, like when you get orchids, and they'll come in trays, and it's nice because you're not paying to ship dirt. You know, so they keep it really lightweight. So what you want to do is get your succulents, and then you can use your box or even your pot, if you've got a little pot there, to shake them off. And I will tell you this, if you have any of these little side petals that pop off or that you need to peel off, just, or, you know, maybe they just break off as you're working with this, save them, because if you put these in just a little bit of soil or like growing medium, they'll pop. Yeah. And so this is why we have the cinnamon. I did not know this until a couple years ago, and I was teaching a class. We were doing a succulent wreath, and one of our vendors was in, who had actually brought us the succulents. He's like, no, be sure you dip them in cinnamon. And I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? And so cinnamon can be a rooting medium.
Really?
Yeah, and it's particularly effective, I guess, with things in like sort of the succulent family, cacti, things like that. So you don't have to worry about, because root tone, the commercial one, works great, but it can be, you know, I guess, you know, there's some toxicity with like kids and pets and things like that. So you don't have to worry about that necessarily with cinnamon. I don't think it's toxic to dogs or cats. But so if you want to give this just a little extra growing boost, what you can do is just, you know, literally just sprinkle a tiny bit out, And it can be El Cheapo cinnamon. It doesn't have to be any kind of famous, like, or, you know, expensive, exotic kind of cinnamon. This is just the Harris Teeter brand. So you can make your spice cookies for Halloween and then also use this as your root medium. So what you're going to do is just get most of the dirt off. So we still have some exposed stem. And then you would just do like just a little tap in the cinnamon, just, you know, just enough to give a little coating on the roots. Now, depending on how your pieces come together, I think she was not joking. She gave me kind of some jigsaw type succulent pieces here, but I've got just enough root here, you know, that I think I can do something with that. And like I said, even if you don't, like, I've had success, and I do not have a green thumb. Let me reiterate that I've even taken little petals like this and done a little dip in cinnamon, popped it in some soil, and had some luck with that.
So should there be no dirt at all? Because some of these seem to have very fine roots. I'm afraid that I'd be destroying the roots if I rub too hard to get rid of the dirt.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because like, case in point with this one has a pretty healthy, very, very fine roots, but it's got a pretty decent soil base. We want to just shake it loose enough that it's not super heavy when we do the moss around it. Okay?
Yep.
And I'll show you, I meant to grab a toothpick before I did that, but I do have a fine little green wooden pick here. But let me actually grab a toothpick from right over here. You don't have to have toothpicks, but if you're ever making these or working with succulents and you feel like, so like the little 2-inch one that I have, you know, it's definitely got a nice little root system on it, but it's still very shallow. So there's not a whole lot for me to, you know, kind of wrap in moss and make a base with. So you can use just, you know, like standard cocktail toothpicks. Just stick it, you know, right in the succulent.
Something to work with. Yeah.
And then that gives me something to work with. And again, it can be a florist pick, but it doesn't have to be. Because, you know, you may have the toothpicks, but you may not have this, you know, if you were working with that. So we're going to, you know, just get these as clean as you can without feeling like you're being too disruptive to the roots on it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then once you've done that, we will get out our moss. And so Kokedama, we actually are going to do a Kokedama class in next year in the spring, which will be really fun. It's a neat way of doing plants, and got a florist industry colleague here in Raleigh, and he does just the most beautiful gardens with them. All it is basically you leave just enough dirt on the root system to sustain it. And you're basically, instead of it going in a pot, you're wrapping it with moss. And then that moss also helps, you know, give it, you know, it's another place for the roots to take hold. It's another place for, you know, to sort of lock in moisture. You know, a lot of people like it because, again, the moss will hold a certain amount of moisture, so, you know, maybe you don't have to water quite as much. But it seems to work particularly well with succulents because, again, they don't need a ton of dirt or plant medium, and they can kind of thrive in anything, and they seem to do really well in the moss. So this green binding wire is going to be our material for wrapping the moss and kind of, you know, holding these and affixing these. So I'll use my sample with sort of the stumpy one that didn't have very good legs first, okay? So what I'm going to do is just break off a little piece of moss, of this log moss that we had. Again, you've got the Spanish moss that can be used to make this little cuff, this little collar on here, or to weave in to your design. Or if you want to mix a little of this in with your green moss, that can be a pretty look too. So I'm just going to sort of tighten this up in my hand, you know, just not wadding it necessarily, but just kind of, you know, condensing it some.
Would you wet it at all or no?
I didn't, because this has been in the cooler. You probably still feel that your piece has a little bit of moisture to it. Do you feel that, like where it feels kind of dense? We keep it misted, and we actually store it in the cooler, because it's not super, super cold, but it seems to kind of slow its loss of moisture, more so than if it was out, on the floor. It seems to really like it, and it can dry out a little bit, but we'll normally keep, open the boxes up and give it just like just a little bit of mist with water.
Yeah.
But if you did add water, just I wouldn't get it soppy, because one, I don't know where you're going to want to put this. You don't necessarily want to have it on a piece of furniture and it's really, really, really wet, and you just the succulents don't need it, So all I've done, this one is probably a little bit more linear, but that's just because of, me creating kind of that false stem. But we've made just like a little moss pouch around it. And what I'm going to do now to tighten that up and to, hold it in place, but then also sort of clean it up a little bit, is I'm just going to take a bit of this length of binding wire, and starting at the top, I'm going to come around, circle, and twist with the open end, okay? And then I'm just going to go up and down at a time or two. And this is kind of a design choice, as well as giving it like a little bit of stability. It doesn't have to, you don't have to like bind it within an inch of its life. We're wrapping it just enough to kind of, tighten up the moss, clean up the moss a little bit, but then to also give it a little stability. Okay. And then I'm going to leave, you can definitely cut this with just regular craft scissors, which I forgot to get out, but leave, maybe, what's that, about 6-7 inches, so that when we go to bind these in, we won't do it yet because we'll sort of work all the time. When we go to bind this in, we've got enough to kind of loop through and then twist back around it. Okay.
Okay.
So you're going to leave kind of a little tail with that. So that's what we're going for. And then when you do give these just a little mist or a little, touch it with like a wet towel or a cloth or something, again, it's just very light. It doesn't have to be soppy to just, keep it invigorated. And you can do the top of the succulent too, but you can, definitely do the moss to make sure it's got some moisture. So work through, keep your have you got like 3-4 little pieces to work with there of assorted succulents?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So just keep making those little bundles. Like, this one where I've definitely got kind of a science experiment of roots going on here.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice root system.
Yeah. So I may, be just a little bit more ginger with how I, affix this. I'm going to try to get sort of a nice little ball around it. But again, that root system is kind of delicate. So if I felt like I needed a little bit of support, I could come up sort of through the moss and through the roots with a toothpick, and pierce into the plant. Just again, to give it a little something to bind to. But and I had this strange combination of fragrances going in my kitchen now. So it's the cinnamon, which smells like I should be baking, and then the moss, which smells like I should be
moss.
Yeah, it's like, not sure what to make of this. The dog's over in the corner, like, I'm not sure what you're doing there, but so, and again, just do like a little twist. And then around time or two. Catch it. And then leave that little length for a fixing. I think it could be really fun too to just take some of these, like do the same little kokedama approach, and you could have just like little plastic spiders and then toothpick them into a pumpkin kind of
Oh,
like
yeah.
rolling up a pumpkin could be kind of fun.
Well, speaking of that, right before the pandemic hit, I did a class somewhere where I was creating a succulent garden in a pumpkin.
We did one of those. Actually, we did one pandemic year too, and it was really popular. And my succulents thrived in that for the longest
Yes.
time. They did really, really well.
Yep.
And I don't know what you did with yours after the pumpkin faded, but I've seen some people who just like pop the pumpkin in a terracotta pot and just keep going, with it.
Well, I transplanted them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I love those. I think they're really neat. There's a lady that I was on a little like class type workshop a few weeks ago where I got to decorate. I did a spooky cocktail and decorated a glass with different, flower and foliage elements. But there's a lady who does just these fantastic pumpkins. And she had gone to the hardware store, just a Home Depot, and she got all kinds of, like the brass tacks that you use in upholstery, like upholstery tacks and stuff. And so she took a white pumpkin, a fresh pumpkin. It was not a resin one, took a fresh pumpkin and did just this beautiful black, like sunflower, almost silhouette on it. And then almost kind of like our logo.
Oh, wow.
And then she did at like the points of the petals, she would do like little brass tacks and upholstery nails on it. It was really, really beautiful. It was the neatest thing. And I was thinking afterwards, I'm like, that would be so cool, but then hollow out the center and do just a whole range of succulents in it.
Exactly.
It would be really, really pretty. So let's see. I'm going to cut this one a little shorter because I used more of my binding wire than I meant to use. And again, like I was telling you, I've had some little victims as I've been working through my succulents. So I'm going to save these and put a little cinnamon on them, pop them in a pot and see if I can get any of them to take root in the next little bit. But then I've got this last kind of fragment. I think I've got enough here that I can do something with it. Let's see. I'm gonna stabilize this one a little bit with a toothpick. I think this is a fun mix of bringing, obviously like everything is a live material. It's just in different states of life now that some of the materials have dried and then some are fresh. So I like the juxtaposition of those two things. I think it's fun. So, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to clean up some of my mess. How are you coming?
Good, I'm done.
Okay, great. Ready. Me too.
Ready for you.
So we are ready to move on.
Yep.
And you tell me anytime if I'm going way too slow, because I try to condition myself to go at kind of what I guess would be sort of a medium pace because of, sometimes people are faster, sometimes people are slower. And I'm like, I don't want to, I can have a tendency to just like zip, 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 Okay. So now, we can go about this one of two ways. If you want to break some of these things down, and go ahead and cut some of, most of them will just break with your fingers. What Darcy found when she was doing this is you want to leave enough surface area that they'll adhere to the glue dots. And you can't even leave a tiny little bit of stem because it'll kind of lock in there, but you don't need this full length, So you can, either cut or snap, and you can probably leave, about like, what is that? Like maybe about an inch? Yeah, like about an inch. So we went back and forth a little bit on what was the best adhesive for this. And we ended up settling on the glue dots, which we love. And, so these are basically just kind of like little 3M type squares. We call them glue dots. They come from the Oasis company. But you actually can find these now in craft stores, but you can also find lots of they're essentially like little mounting squares, like you would use like in scrapbooking or framing. But when we did this and we used like the cold flour glue, it would get kind of goopy and leak down. And then if you use hot glue, one, you could really burn yourself, even if it was one of the cold, and I guess you could use one of the cold temp glue guns. So you could use one of those. But again, we got like a lot of stringing and kind of like, like not like clumps in it, but, it would kind of like, work its way down the boot. So this was a pretty clean approach to it. It gave us enough to adhere, but without having any glue drifts. So what you want to do is just get an idea of kind of where you want to place things. And the boot's fun because it's got these little ledges. So basically like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little ledges. So it may be that on sort of one of the little flat ledges, what I would do is I'd put the glue dots down, but I wouldn't take the tabs off yet. So that you sort of get a bunch of them placed on with where you want to put things. And then you can peel the backing off pretty easily off of it. But then that way, it's kind of like a little visual. When we were playing around with one of these, we took all the tabs off first, and then it was like, okay, now where did the glue go? It was like trying to find it on here since it's clear. So this kind of gives you a little eyeball of like where you might start to place things, So each one of these can be a little bind point for 1 or 2 of your dried items.
Yeah.
And again, there's no like perfect formula for this. You can choose to do kind of one little wave of color down one side of the boot, which is what Darcy did here that I think is really lovely. You can see the bugs, and then she did some extra little pops along the back. Or if you want to, dot your color all around, you might want to bring some more down on the bridge. You might even want to do something fun like, with this little pointy toe, you might even do a little something down on the pointy toe, popping up. So brainstorm for a minute, figure out where you want to put some of your glue dots, and we'll get some of these down, and then start spreading those out. And then, as you're doing that, do give some thought to where you want your succulents to live on here, because what we'll do is bind those in using the binding wire, like looping it through. And so, be sure you leave an allowance for those as well. We all joke now, like we were talking about the evolution of our tool bags over the years, with different things that now we never will leave the flower shop without, like, like on a busy wedding weekend, and glue dots are one of those things.
Yeah.
We've joked, like, we're pretty sure you could like rescue a failed wedding cake and bustle a wedding dress with them if you needed to. So. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got like 7 little glue dots down in places that I know I want to put some little dried materials, but then I'm going to go ahead and eyeball and sort of figure out the placement of these. And, with the succulents, there's not necessarily a right or wrong. I think it is sort of open to your perspective on it. I kind of like the thought of if you've got one. So I have this sort of weird aberrant one. This is, they really were not joking with me when they said, oh, we've given you a fun grab bag in your kit this evening, because I think they went through and found all of our little, like, Island of Misfit toy succulents. Because this is one that started, it was not exactly like this, but it started short. And it's been on somebody's work table, and it has sprouted, it's shot up. So I got that one, and then I got a weird cactus, So I'm going to choose to do this sort of heavier one lower in the boot, just because I don't want it to get top heavy. And I'm going to have to see the best way to bind this through here. It should weave through without too much trouble. There we go. And you can, it's not necessarily that you have to do, but you can even do a little glue dot to anchor that if you need to. but you'll take the bonding wire, lace it through the boot, and then twist it in place. So kind of like so.
Nice.
A little sassy plume on the back now. So let's see. How are you coming?
Good.
Good. I was thinking about even like bringing one of my little succulents up into the top. I think could be kind of fun. And then I'll flip back over to Darcy's a minute. So she used her metal wire to make, you know, kind of like a denser collar across the top and anchor the moss and one of her succulents. But when we were playing around with these, you got enough length that, you know, you could even do something kind of abstract with it where like you almost like, you know, do like a little cyclone of wire around it, or, you know, the whole variety of ways that you could weave it in and, you know, do something fun with it. Was playing around. I forget who did one like this in the shop. So a lot of times when we're making something, we'll do like a few different samples.
Yeah.
And I thought this was kind of a fun look to see it, you know.
That is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. We were joking that it's kind of like a Gothic fashion show, you know, where, you know, not everything is, you know, uniform, you know, it's like, you know, when you see the pictures from like Paris Fashion Week and you're like, there's no way anyone would ever be able to wear that to the grocery store, but I see what you were doing, you know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, I kind of like that little twist of that here. I'm just going to twist it back with my pliers, but again, you do it with your hands too. Yeah. So I'm going to add a few of my little dried elements on. I'll take these tabs off. And let me know if you have any questions as we're working through this. I think this is kind of one of those where, you know, it's like, now read the essay and write your opinion about how you liked, you know, this piece, where, you know, you sort of reach a piece where, or place in the designing where there's a little bit of open to interpretation, you know. But definitely, I think a fun project. So this is one of those where when I ordered these, because sometimes for both our website and for classes, I'll find a container and I'll say, okay, I'd kind of like to see these colors in it, or I'm kind of thinking this, or, you know, and then I'll leave somebody on our design staff, like Darcy did with this one, just sort of alone with it to see what they come up with. And I'm always like, I never would have thought about that, you know? And so it's a fun process of this. And, you know, and I think you've probably seen it before, like we'll have a design class and everyone will start with the exact same materials, but
everyone will end up different. Exactly.
Everybody will end up with really different results. And yeah, and like for most of these like little dried materials, I can just snap the little heads off. I'm not even really having to you know, cut anything. So I'm just doing some little clusters here and there with pops of color, because I kind of want to, you see the color dance up that way a little bit. And sort of, yeah, again, you know, you can, you know, play off one angle of the boot. You might play off the tip of it. I love these little ledges, so I think it's fun to play off the ledges there. I'm still debating if I like my succulent living there, or if I want to move him down. When I saw this, I was like, I don't know if that's a witch's boot or if it is, who was the old Mother Hubbard? There's something about it that's very old Mother Hubbard about it to me, you know?
Yeah.
let's see. Oh, I was going to show you too. One thing that's cool about this celosia is, and you might need scissors to do this. It might break right off, but now that it's dry, you can basically just pull it apart. So you don't have to use the full clump of it. It'll separate pretty easily. Let's put this in the Delaton. I used to have may even still have it in those things that like your parents bring to you and say, we saved this for you. We knew you were going to want it someday. Sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But we always had a house full of a lot of books. We always had a lot of books in our house. And I remember very distinctly a nursery rhyme book with this great illustration of Mother Hubbard, and the boot was very, very much like this. So when I first saw this, that was the very first thing I thought of. So
fun.
Now, did you have a favorite Halloween costume growing up?
No, actually, we very rarely actually ever celebrated Halloween, to be honest. The most we did was to go to my grandparents to trick or treat over there and visit with them, and that was about it. So Halloween was never a big deal for us. So I never really got into it until college, and then in college I used to dress as a witch only because The Wizard of Oz is one of my all-time favorite movies. I always thought I was like kind of, playing a part from that, a character from that movie.
Right. Oh, I love that. That's great. Yeah, I think we've all had, I think it's kind of hard to have grown up. I will not ask your age or imply that, but like Warren and I were talking about not long ago with some friends who are all like, he's 53, I turned 50 this year. And I think if you are anywhere in between like probably 40, 45, and 60, it was like this ritual that, what was it, like one night out of the year on TV, they would show The Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And most of your teachers would be merciful and not load you down with homework so you could watch it,
Yes.
And so growing up, at some point or another, I think everyone had this connection to, you either thought you were the Scarecrow or you thought you were Dorothy or you thought but we were talking about that with, Vivian at some point, and now, because of Netflix and even before that, Redbox or Blockbuster or whatever, I think it's hard for people to understand that there literally were movies that you only saw once a year. And that
I know. And it was, it used to be such a treat. I would look forward to it so much.
Yeah.
And I was even more thrilled when I went off to college and found that there were other people like me who got so excited about it. And
right.
Really fanatics about it like I was.
Yeah.
So we'd have these Wizard of Oz, viewing parties, and I just loved it.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was such a thing at our house. It was like, the whole world kind of stopped for you to watch. It was normally like, what was it, like Wizard of Oz was always like once a year. And then you'd have like a wave of the classic, animated Christmas movies or like Charlie Brown and things like that. And life kind of came to a stop on those times, Yep,
exactly.
Yeah. So this is very therapeutic. This is like just, it's kind of like, it's just, like nice to kind of see how these little colors and textures come together. So how's yours coming?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, no, I love losing myself in crafts. It helps just clear the mind. It's for me, it's like the equivalent of meditation.
It really is. Like we will talk about that sometimes in the shop, like, especially if you're doing some things where you either have a little bit of time to do it or you're doing like repetitive things. You can really kind of get in a zone with it. So
yeah, exactly.
And the glue dots are definitely the trick. They're nice for adhering to it because then they kind of go away as well.
Yeah, I was noticing that.
Yeah. And it's a nice material choice, I think, with this because they're lightweight enough that, again, you don't have to worry about like a glue setting time. We're going through one thing that we thought about with this was, like I was mentioning, using like the cold glue that we use in some flower projects, but we are actually going through an industry shortage of that right now, which
Really?
is really proving difficult. Yeah. And there are a couple of companies that have done alternatives, but they're just not nearly as good as some of the one, like kind of the industry default is the one by Oasis, the flower foam company.
Yep.
Theirs is considered really the best on the market. And so apparently they had a bad run, like a bad batch, and pretty much had to scrap it. It shipped, but then it was not actually, it didn't stick. So there was that. So that happened. And then they had, there's just been crazy demand for it. And then on top of that, there's been like more demand than they could keep up with. And then I think they've had some supply chain issues. So we're just all kind of ready for our industry to get back to normal a little bit. It doesn't feel like it's going to happen super, super fast. But so I just added in another one of my succulents, and now I'm trying to decide if I'm going to keep another one low or where I'm going to go with that. So, and I may cap it off at 3. I've got one little space over here, but are your materials working well for you?
Yeah.
Great. And one thing I was going to mention, we were talking about kind of care and keep of this, and you don't have to rush out and buy any tonight, but if you don't have any hairspray and you are in the grocery store, the drugstore, whatever, just get like a old school, even like an Aquanet, and a little bit of hairspray misted on this, not the succulents, but on the dried materials, will keep them from shedding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it can work really nicely for that. And very, very light. It doesn't have to be like a heavy wear, not like the hairdos that we wore when we were watching The Wizard of Oz.
Right, right. Yeah. So I hear you.
Oh, listen, I've got, somehow it made its way to my desk in my office here at home, but I have my 8th grade class picture. And Vivian's like, what were you guys thinking? Why would you ever want your hair to look like that? You know, and like, what is that, Mom? And I'm like, yeah, you're not far off base there. It was one of those, like where you feather the front and then perm.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Oh, yeah. Those really bad, awkward moments, those bad fashion choices.
But it was all the rage back then.
I know, right? It was like if you
everybody was doing it.
Yeah, if you didn't do it, you felt like the outcast.
Exactly.
Let's see. A little unruly piece of celosia there. Save my little straw flower bloom, and I was going to save one of my little bunny tails to play off the line of this little boot point.
I did the same thing because you gave me the idea.
Yeah,
So
I love just that little witch's
exactly
turn, you know.
Except it almost softens it because it's fuzzy and furry, and I think a witch's is harsh.
Yeah. Trying to decide where my little plume of bunny tail, or like the little angel
Oh, yeah.
wings will live. And I think I'm going to get them up here. They should attach with a couple of glue dots, but let's see here. So I feel like this needs like a little movement, you know, sort of coming up out of the. I'll have projects sometimes where I'm using like, you know, these glue dots. And if I cut it in little small squares, I literally will find them for days. Like I think I have found them, you know, in all kinds of, you know, like in my back pocket, you know, stuck all over the place. And then I didn't do like a solid cuff of the moss. I'm going to weave like a little bit of moss, you know, like kind of tumbling down and through my wire just a little bit, because I think that'd be kind of fun. And if I need to anchor it, I can use a little glue dot underneath to hold it. And maybe even like another little pop of color. And we've got, this is like our third dry project that we've done this year. We did a really fun wreath design a couple months back, that it was like a embroidery type hoop, like a ring.
Oh, really?
And we did like, you build out kind of a frame across it with twine and yarn.
Mm-hmm.
And then did flowers all woven through it. It was beautiful. It's been one of my favorite projects that we've done. I thought it was just really, really neat. And I was saying like, man, we should do a version of that, either not just like we don't do it for Christmas, like maybe in the spring sometime, because it was just, because I think you could try to take that same idea and do like really beautiful ribbon woven through it, and then weave dried materials through it. Could be really fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you were going to be doing an evergreen wreath class or something this year.
We are. We actually, if I will ever sit at my desk long enough to get everything loaded, I got a little scolding from my staff today, like, okay, we kind of got to get our calendar out there. We're going to do, we've got some classes that we're going to pop up this week. We're going to do evergreen wreath. Mm-hmm. And then we are also going to we'll do a cornucopia in November. Okay.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
And then we're going to do a holiday. So I don't know if you've seen before, like a holiday centerpiece, but it's actually like a boxwood tree.
Oh.
You know, so it's like a tree shape, but it can be used for centerpiece and nice and long lasting. So,
I was going to say, is it actually, will the boxwood last?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it'll be in a little bit of a combination of a foam and chicken wire base, and built out with a base of boxwood that'll be nice and hardy, but with Christmas greens, and then some other, foliage and textural and berry elements woven through it. We actually have our sample at the Florist right now testing the vase life on it, because we made it almost 2 weeks ago, and because sometimes we'll do that and play around with like care and handling, to see like how long we need, how long something needs to go before it's watered again, or before it has either like some refresh or whatever. And it's doing surprisingly well. I was like, wow, this is not joking around. So I am having fun with this. I'm just doing like some little splashes of color, and then I've got a little bit of my mosses left, so I may come here and there and do like some little tucks of moss to bring a little extra green up into it. I think that's kind of fun. You don't have to, but kind of like the texture that adds. So how are you coming?
Good. I think I'm a little bit behind you, but I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those where I've placed and then moved a little bit and then, you know, kind of contemplating like, should I put this here? Or... I'm still a little stumped on what I'm going to do. I've got one, like sort of one last little remnant of succulent left, and I don't know exactly where I want to go with it. So I'm going to put my last bunny tail down here at the bottom. You're right, it does. It gives like a little softness to the boot tip, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Having a little bit of the moss left is kind of nice. So you don't necessarily, the glue dots pretty much recede, but if you do want to cover your mechanics a little bit, like a little pop of moss in them here and there is nice for coverage. Or again, like you're saying, like you just want to add like a little extra pop of green, gives it a little bit more of like a topiary feel.
Yeah.
Get there we go. And then you get an unruly glue dot where the little cover doesn't want to come off. It's nice that Darcy packed enough of the yarrow that, you know, you can, if you like that little shot of gold, which I think is really pretty with it, you've got enough that you can kind of weave it down, you know, and get like a little fining of it through.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's see what I have left in my red, in my celosia, in my gumfrina. Those are kind of my strongest colors. Getting some of our last waves of local garden product this week and last week, and we're all kind of like, oh, we're excited for fall weather, but we're not ready to see fall, like, you know, local flowers go. So this was kind of our way of like, okay, well, we've got a little bit of preserving them with, you know, having dried things to go into the fall.
Are you still doing the class tomorrow night?
We are doing that tomorrow night. Are you going to come join us?
No, I have a conflict. I won't be able to make that one. That's why I signed up for this one.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got that one tomorrow night. I think it's going to be fun. It's pretty, our design is called Moody Blooms. And
Yeah.
so it's it's a really pretty container. It's sort of a metallic blue, sort of a sapphire blue. And then the flower palette is like plums and purples and dark blues, like real moody colors.
Yeah.
You know, and then we've got just a little bit of, I think we're going to do a black feather in it too. I'd forgotten about this guy. And then like a little hint of, we've got some flowers that we, our term now, instead of spray painted, is manipulated. So that we're gonna do a little shot of like some really dark, like smoky blacks or grays or something. That could be kind of fun if you wanted to give it like a little feathery plume. Not sure if I'm going to do that or if I like it just kind of lighter like that. So I figure if I have a little bit left material wise, I can find a good home for it somewhere. I didn't think I was going to use all those glue dots, but I had just about, not quite used them all up, but I'm getting close.
Yeah, I used more than I thought I would as well.
Yeah, because I looked when she was packing them today, and I'm like, I don't think I'm going to need that many. She's like, trust me, you'll need that many when you get going with it, you know. Kind of a different way of arranging instead of using like chicken wire or foam or, you know, something like, it's maybe like a little bit more traditional floral design wear, is to use adhesive. Let's see. I'm going to see if a glue dot will stick to moss, because I have a place I want to put something. So I'll take it off its tab though. See how that goes. Yeah, that'll work. It's one of those color palettes where it's kind of like, wow, I really love the, you know, the mix of like just that little bit of the gold with the kind of peachy and the wines and the fuchsia. Really pretty. Now, have you are you like back in the office with work, or do you work remote? Are you remote or?
You know, it's interesting you ask. I am 100% remote and have been for like 5 years or so now.
I thought I remembered that you were like that. You.
Yep. And so that was even pre-pandemic. And I would not go back to the office. You couldn't pay me enough to go back to the office.
I think there are a lot of folks who, now that they've worked from home, find that is, you know, it's just the best fit, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. And Warren worked for a company that pre-pandemic was very much, you know, in the office and off, you know, unless they were out in the field for sales or something. And now that everyone's had the taste of like working remotely, it's like, yep, nope, we're good. We're not going back.
Yeah, well, my husband's job, the same thing. And actually, at the time of the pandemic, we were hard pressed to envision how he might be able to work remotely. And now they are remote except for 2 days a week. So it's kind of a hybrid situation. But people don't want to go back to the office now that they've been able to work from home.
Well, and you know, the one thing that's nice about it is I think it's also opened up some opportunities for people who either would leave the workforce otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, like I've got, you know, a couple members of my staff who are, and a couple of them are designers, but they'll do other things for us, you know, like they, you know, work on consultations and, you know, and but like a couple had young children and one's expecting, and pre-pandemic, I don't know that it's not that I would have been averse to it, but I wouldn't have thought about how can we adjust our work environment so, it's more flexible for you with that. And now it's like, hey, yeah, if you want to, I don't care, but you can work from home 2 days a week, I mean, and I think what a lot of companies have found is that sometimes you actually are, I don't want to say that you get more work out of people. That's not really what I mean by that. But I think you find that people value the ability to have that flexibility.
Well, I can tell you, I'm more productive working from home because I can focus more and I don't have to be distracted by what's the weather like. Am I going to have trouble with the commute? You know what I mean?
100%. I definitely do that. I work from home now pretty solidly, I'd say at least 2 days a week. And, just because I love the design side of things, but I'm very often like, hey, we've got to order this, or hey, we've got to plan for that, and it's hard for me to get that work done in the shop because, customers will come in, or, I'll have to, stop and get involved in something on the design floor or whatever. And so if I didn't have kind of that unplugged time or uninterrupted time, that pre-pandemic or when I was able to do that, that would be work that I'd have to do at night after everybody had gone to bed, and now, that's given me some freedom in doing that. And I'm really appreciative for kind of that, reset. I think a lot of companies have started to think about what does it look like if you have a modified work week or you're not necessarily in the office every day.
Yep.
I have some of these little places where it's like I'd put the glue dot down, but then I can't quite get the glue dot down. So I'm putting it on the piece of material, and then I can't quite get it off my fingers. So it's like I'm going to be glued to my boot.
Well, I was going to ask you, how did the glue dot work on the moss?
It actually worked pretty well. There's one place where I was able to put it on the binding wire that was holding the kokedama, and that worked really, really well. And then in another space, I ended up putting it on the Nigella pod.
Oh, yeah.
And then adhering to it because I had enough of a surface there that I could do that. So that actually worked pretty well. I was surprised. I was like, I'm getting ready to make a really big mess here. But it actually went okay. And I was sort of glad that I did this little loop of wire around it because I am right now, I wrapped a couple of glue dots around a piece of the wire. And then that let me anchor a couple of those super light little gumdrop pieces onto the wire. So they kind of see, like, it kind of looks like it's floating.
Yeah.
I thought it was nice. Fun. Yeah. I didn't think I would end up using almost all of these dried materials, but I have worked through them pretty heartily here. Did you have with some of your celosia this sort of peachy color?
Yeah.
I think that is a beautiful color. It's kind of like one of those where it's like, I wish I could get my cheeks to glow like that, Now, do you find, because like you were mentioning, you've been at it a little bit longer than some of us with working from home. Do you find that you have to do certain things to so that you actually stop working sometimes during the day, or have you gotten in a pretty good routine with that?
Yeah, for me, maintaining work-life balance has always been something that's been important. I just find it easier to do from home. So I make sure I log off at a particular time.
Right.
And I am logged off for the rest of the time until the following day when I go back and log back on. That's just the way it is. So, and I've made it work. My employers seem happy with the work that I'm doing, so it's not an issue.
Right. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think if there's anything you do hear people say that they have a little trouble maintaining or finding that balance.
Yeah.
But then, once you do, it's, it can be wonderful. I'm going to see if a glue dot will adhere to a succulent, because I want to bring in this leggy succulent that I have, I want to bring just the tiniest little piece of this celosia into it. I thought that would be kind of fun to bring the color down through that, so that it follows all the way through. We're actually not that far from each other, because I live right off of Highway 98. Oh,
really? Because I was going to say, you certainly got back a lot faster. I thought you were going to be heading all the way back to Glenwood Ave.
Yeah, no, I live, if you know where 98 and 50 meet up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I live on the Durham side of that, but not by much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so not far at all. Yeah, I always, it's one of those things, because my work trajectory is always taking me into Raleigh, like Glenwood Avenue and Briar Creek and around. And so I'll sometimes forget just how close we are to Wake Forest, because we're closer to Durham. So like even part of our neighborhood is in Durham County. They still call it Raleigh, but it technically falls in Durham County. But they're, so like a lot of times if we run to dinner or whatever, it's actually quicker for us to go to downtown Durham than it is for us to go to downtown Raleigh by a good bit. But I'll forget. I'm like, man, we should go to downtown Wake Forest. Wake Forest has got it's got a nice restaurant scene now.
Yeah, we did the Ghost Walk recently.
How was that? I've seen that, and I'm like, oh man, we got to do that the next time Vivian's home, because she loves a ghost walk.
We thought that was kind of fun, and we actually learned a lot about the area by just attending, and learned, like you just said, that there are so many places to hang out here, because we've been holed up throughout the whole pandemic. We were a little bit clueless, I'm embarrassed to say.
Oh no.
So
yeah. So I think they're going to do the ghost walk year round, right? It's not just a Halloween thing, right?
I don't know, because when I bought tickets, it was advertised as something that was seasonal for this time of year. So I'm not sure. But it was fun. I mean, I recommend it if you've never done it, because it's certainly, a fun thing to do at least once.
That is one of our favorite things to do if we travel to a new city.
Yeah.
We always hunt out a ghost walk, which I know sounds really odd, but sometimes it can, very often they're walking tours, and we love getting out and on our feet in a new place and exploring by foot if we can. But it's also nice because very often, even if there's a lot of tall tale involved with it, it does give you sort of a good dissection of the history of the area.
Yes.
And so like Vivian's in school in Savannah, so there's no shortage of ghost walks in Savannah.
Exactly.
We've not done them all yet, but there's one you can take in a hearse, and there's one you can do on a riverboat. Then there's one you can do on a horse. Yeah, there's one you can do in a horse carriage. So they're like all kind. Plus there are walking ones. But Warren just had a business trip in Birmingham, and I used to live like a little bit north of Birmingham, but I'd never done a ghost walk there. They had a ghost walk, so we did a ghost walk one night, and it was great. We had a really charming guide, and she had all kinds of fun stories to share, and it was just really, really neat, because like you said, I think you'll learn things about an area that you might not be privy to otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And very often you're in an area like a downtown or some area that, it certainly may be seeing some revitalization, but it also could be that the ghost walk is part of that process.
Yep, exactly. I can imagine doing a ghost walk in Beaufort is probably.
I bet that's fantastic.
Yeah.
We, when Vivian was little, we were in Asheville one time on a family vacation and we did a ghost walk, and she loved it so much that literally every time we go to Asheville now, even though we've probably done it 20 times now, we do the ghost walk again. I don't know that we could lead it, but we've done it enough that we know, like, we're like, oh yeah, now he's going to talk about this. So I think this is a really fun, whimsical project. So I love how this is coming together. How is yours doing?
Good. Can you see it?
Oh no, I want to see. So is your camera on?
Oh, hold on. Is it not?
Yeah, I don't see you.
Oh, this whole time I thought that we were okay. Apologies. Let me see.
Oh,
what I can do about that.
Apologize, but I want to see it.
Yeah. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
We'll work through the technicalities here.
Oh no, Zoom is a wonderful thing, but it can have its little moments too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm not even seeing the options, so I don't know. Maybe I'll have to take a picture and just send it to you.
Yeah. Huh. Let me pick around the corner and look at my settings, because it should allow you.
Oh, start video. Hello. Oh,
You got it? Are you there?
oh. I didn't realize I was off camera the whole time.
Yeah. Where'd you go? I still don't see you. I hear you, but I don't see you.
Oh, well, it says it started the camera.
Huh.
That's weird. Sorry about that.
Well, that's okay. I was going to say, let me call Warren and see if he can take a
Well,
look.
like I said, I didn't realize it was one-sided. I thought you could see me from the start.
Yeah. Let me ask my tech guru if he can come up. So yeah, because I want to see it. So even if we can't get that done, you've got to send me a picture.
I will, yeah.
Yeah, your initials flashed off and then they flash back up. So
It's strange. It's probably something on my end. Oh, wait a minute. Aha. Can you
figure it out?
Can you see me now?
I can't see you. No.
Really? Okay.
I don't know. Here, let me pop back around to the. Here you are. Oh my gosh, I love it. Hold on, I want to see it on the big screen. Oh, I love it. It looks so great. Where are you going to put it?
Probably in my living room. It's very seasonal.
But you got to send me a picture once you find a home for it.
I will. I like it.
I think it's really fun. Yeah, like we do so many like fresh bouquet classes, which we love and are really entertaining and great. But I love mixing in some of these dried classes. I think it's neat to see these different materials come together and kind of play with different approaches to making things stick or come together like the glue dots.
Well, I was astonished when I did the class you're having tomorrow night. When I did it a couple of years ago, I was astonished at how long that bouquet lasted. Actually, it was awesome. It lasted quite a long time, and I was
I'd love to hear that.
So,
yeah. Well, I think that's one thing. Like we'll do a few times a year. We'll do something like all tulips or all roses or something like that. But most of the time, when we're building a class out, we try to think about doing something like like a mixed bouquet, so you've got things like a whole range. And one of the things that's really cool about the fall is you'll work with things like celosia or yarrow or even certain leaves that even when they start to die per se, they actually hold their color. Like we did a class a few years ago where, I mean, it was a bouquet, you made it in a vase in water and everything was, fresh, as you would call it. But the whole intent was to let it die in the vase and dry, and it was really neat. And I've had people tell me, I took that, I still have that. I put it away for fall, because we did things like antique hydrangea. And I think it had, like some eucalyptus and some celosia and yarrow and, a couple of types of berries and leaves and things that would fall, like that would dry and largely hold their color. Or even if they got kind of that patina like the bunny tail did, it was still really lovely. So it was neat. So, well, this was a treat. We'll have to do this more often. I'll just call you up and say, hey, let's meet on Zoom and do a class. So it was so good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. I actually probably haven't physically seen you since pre-pandemic.
Exactly. That Valentine's, it was right after things started and right before everything locked down.
I know, yeah. So it was good to remedy that and to catch up. So
yeah, exactly.
We're close enough. We'll have to figure out a time that we meet for like a glass of wine or something. I mean,
I was going to say, if I had known you were coming to deliver this personally, I told my husband, I'm like, I would have cleaned things up and we would have had a private class on the back porch and we would have, we could have done it together in person, but
well, we're close enough that we'll have. Well, you know what? If you're ever open to this, sometimes when I do a Zoom class, if we have a bigger Zoom class, I actually love to have someone come and do it with me, because what's nice is that somebody will be doing it, and we're able to back this up enough so you can take in two people doing it. Or I've done it before, where like somebody does it at the kitchen table. And I'm here, and then we angle the camera that way. So if I do that, sometimes you'll have to come and be my sidekick.
A little assistant? Sure.
I would love that. That would be great. Sure. So awesome. Well, it was so good to see you.
Same here.
Okay. Don't be a stranger.
See you in another class.
Okay. Thanks so much, Lynn.
Bye.
Bye.